The forest was dark and alive with strange sounds. Cold wind moved through the tall trees, carrying the scent of wet leaves and wild animals. A young alien girl ran barefoot over the muddy ground, her breathing fast, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Every step sent sharp pain through her legs, but she could not stop. She had to keep going. Behind her, heavy footsteps followed, slow but steady, like a predator who knew his prey could not escape. Each step seemed closer. Then the last, she pushed through the thick vines, ignoring the way they scratched her skin. Her mind was filled with the same terrifying thought her people had told her since childhood. Humans are carnivores. Dangerous, and they eat the flesh of other beings. She had seen it in the eyes of hunters before, and now those same eyes were chasing her. Her ankle twisted on a root, and she stumbled forward, catching herself on her hands. Mud smeared across her arms. She glanced over her shoulder. In the distance, between the trees, she saw a movement, a shadow, tall and broad, carrying something long in one hand. Her breath caught. It had to be his weapon, the one he would use to kill her. She darted to the left, moving downhill toward the sound of rushing water. Maybe the river would hide her tracks. Maybe she could escape. But the slope was slippery, and the cold air made her lungs burn. Then it happened. Sharp snap in the ground beneath her. Something yanked her feet out from under her, and she was lifted into the air with a cry. A rope tightened around her ankle, swinging her upside down from a tree branch. Blood rushed to her head, and the forest spun around her. She kicked wildly, but the rope held firm. From the shadows, he stepped into the light, the human. He was tall, with broad shoulders, and a face half covered by a rough beard. His eyes were sharp, scanning her from head to toe. In one hand, he held a long knife, the blade glinting in the weak sunlight. In the other, he carried a coiled rope, maybe to tie her even tighter. Her breath turned to panic. This was it. This was how humans began their hunt. He walked closer, his boots pressing deep into the mud. She tried to curl herself away, but hanging upside down gave her no chance to move. Her voice broke as she shouted, "Stay away from me." He stopped, looking at her as if she had just spoken something strange. Then he knelt down, placing his knife in the dirt, and examined the trap rope with quick, skilled hands. "You're hurt," he said, his voice low and calm. The words froze. She had expected threats, maybe even laughter. Steady sounded concerned. Her eyes narrowed in confusion. "You caught me," she hissed. "Now you will eat me." His brow furrowed, as if he did not understand. "Eat you?" "No," he said, shaking his head. "I don't eat people." She didn't believe him. Oh. Why would a predator admit his plans so soon? He reached into his pack and pulled out a small knife with a curved edge. The sight of the blade made her twist and kick, desperate to get free, but instead of cutting her, he cut the rope. She fell hard into the mud with a grunt, scrambling backward on her hands. He held his hands out slowly, showing her his palms. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. Her ankle throbbed with pain. She could barely stand, but she forced herself up, limping away. He followed, not running, just walking steadily behind her. "You're bleeding," he said again. She ignored him, trying to put distance between them. But the forest floor was uneven, and her ankle screamed with each step. She stumbled again, this time falling to her knees. Before she could push herself up, he was beside her, crouching down. She felt his shadow cover her. She tried to crawl away, but his hand caught her wrist, not tight enough to hurt, but firm, enough to stop her. "Hold still," he said. She froze, expecting the sharp edge of a blade. Instead, he pulled a strip of clean cloth from his pack and gently wrapped it around her ankle. His touch was careful, almost gentle, as if he was afraid of making the injury worse. She stared at him in disbelief. This was not what hunters did. This was not what she had been taught. When he was done, he sat back on his heels and gave her space. "You can walk better now," he said. Her mind raced. Why would a predator help his prey walk, unless he wanted her strong enough to run again, so the hunt would be more exciting? Her stomach tightened. She couldn't trust him. He stood and picked up his knife, sliding it into a sheath on his belt. Then he glanced toward the darkening sky. "It's going to rain soon. You should come with me." She shook her head sharply. "No, you want me alive so you can eat me later." He sighed a slow, tired sound, then turned and started walking. "Fine, but the forest is dangerous at night. If you change your mind, follow my tracks." She stayed still, watching him disappear into the trees. The sound of his footsteps faded. The forest closed in again, the wind colder, the shadows deeper. Somewhere far off, something growled. Her ankle ached, her stomach twisted with hunger. She looked at the path where he had gone, then at the dark forest around her. The choice was simple, but it felt like a trap all the same. And with her heart still racing, she limped after him. The forest grew quieter as the alien girl followed the human's tracks. Her bare feet sank into the soft mud, each step uncertain. The air smelled of rain and smoke, a strange mix that pulled her forward. She kept her distance, never letting him know how close she was. At least she thought she was hidden, until he stopped suddenly. Without turning his head, he spoke in a calm voice. "If you're going to follow me, you might as well walk beside me." She froze. How could he know she was there? Slowly, he turned to face her. His eyes met hers, sharp, focused, and unreadable. They reminded her of the great hunting cats of her homeworld, always watching, always ready. Every instinct told her to run, but her injured ankle throbbed with pain. She limped closer, but kept her arms tight around herself as if to guard against him. He walked on, leading the way through the thick forest. The light above was fading as heavy clouds rolled in. Soon they reached a small clearing where a campfire burned low, its orange glow dancing over the wet ground. The smell hit her first, something cooking over the flames, rich, warm, and heavy with the scent of meat. Her stomach growled loudly before she could stop it. The human glanced at her with the smallest smile. "Hungry?" She shook her head quickly, her eyes darting to the meat skewered on a stick above. "The fire? I will not eat what you kill for me. I know your tricks. You feed your prey before you eat them." His brows lifted, almost in surprise. Then he chuckled softly. "You think I'm going to eat you?" Her silence was answer enough. He crouched near the fire, turning the stick so the meat cooked evenly. The fat sizzled, dripping into the flames, sending up tiny sparks. He spoke without looking at her. "If I wanted to harm you, I wouldn't have given you water earlier. I wouldn't have fixed your ankle, and I wouldn't be wasting this food on you." She hesitated, eyes narrowing. "Then why help me at all?" He glanced up, and in the glow of the firelight, his eyes seemed even sharper, like a predator's gaze, but not filled with hunger. Instead, there was something else, something she could not name. "Because you're not my enemy," he said simply. She stayed standing, keeping her distance. The warmth from the fire reached her, but she refused to sit. She was certain this was still a trick. Predators could be patient. When they wanted something, the human tore off a small piece of the cooked meat and ate it. The sound of his chewing was quiet, almost deliberate, as if to prove the food was safe. Then he held the stick toward her, her hands tightened into fists. "You think I will believe it's not?" "Me?" He gave her a strange look, then laughed. A deep, warm sound that caught her off guard. "It's deer, not you." She didn't move. The smell was almost too much to resist. She couldn't let herself trust him. He shrugged and set the stick back over the fire. "Suit yourself. But you should eat something before the rain starts. It'll be a long night," thunder rumbled. Overhead, she hugged her arms tighter, feeling the cold creeping in. The human stood and began rummaging through his pack, pulling out a rough blanket and a small metal pot. He poured water from a canteen into the pot and set it over the fire, adding dried leaves and herbs. The scent slowly filled the air, blending with the smell of meat. She watched his movements carefully. Every motion was precise, efficient, like someone who had done this many times before. It reminded her of how her own people prepared before a hunt. The thought made her chest tighten again. Finally, he looked up. "You can sit. The ground won't bite." Reluctantly, she lowered herself to the edge of the firelight, still ready to spring up if he made a move. The heat of the flames brushed against her skin, loosening the tension in her shoulders but not the fear in her heart. He handed her a steaming cup from the pot. "It's just tea. Warms you up." She held it in both hands, feeling the heat seep into her fingers, but didn't drink. She kept her eyes on him, searching for any sign of danger. For a while neither spoke. The fire crackled, the wind rustled the trees. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. Finally, she broke the silence. "You have eyes like a predator." He smirked slightly. "Maybe, but not every predator hunts the same prey." Her heart skipped a beat at his words. She didn't know if it was a warning or a promise. The rain began, soft at first, then heavier, drumming against the leaves above. The human adjusted the fire, building it higher. "You should get inside," he said, nodding toward a dark shape beyond the clearing. Only now did she notice the small wooden shelter, half hidden by trees. She hesitated. Going inside would mean letting him close the space between them. Staying outside meant facing the cold rain and the dark forest. He turned toward the shelter. Without waiting for her answer, "Your choice," he called over his shoulder. She looked at the fire, then at the shadows gathering in the forest. Lightning flashed, and for a brief moment, she thought she saw movement between the trees. Something large, watching them. Her throat tightened. Without another thought, she limped after him, toward the shelter. The rain beat hard against the roof of the small wooden shelter. Inside, the air was warmer, filled with the smell of burning wood and cooked meat. The alien girl sat on a rough bench near the wall, her eyes locked on the human as he worked by. The fire in the corner. He had hung his wet coat near the flames to dry, the water dripping onto the floor. His movements were slow but sure, each action done with purpose. He turned the meat roasting over the small fire pit, letting the heat sear it on all sides. The sound of sizzling fat made her stomach twist with hunger, but she refused to let him see her weakness. She hugged her knees, watching carefully. The scent was almost too strong now, warm and rich, cutting through the damp smell of the forest. Her people had warned her that humans used food to lower their praise guard, feed them, make them trust, then strike when they least expect it. The human glanced at her, his eyes catching the firelight. "You should eat," he said. She shook, her head sharply. "I know what you are doing." He raised an eyebrow. "And what is that? You want me to eat so I will grow slower, heavier, easier for you to catch later?" For a moment his lips twitched as if he wanted to laugh. But he only said, "That's one way to see it." She stayed silent, but her hunger spoke for her, growling so loud it made her cheeks burn. The human took the meat off the fire and set it on a small wooden plate. Without saying anything more, he tore off a piece and put it in his mouth. He chewed, slowly, his eyes never leaving hers, as if daring her to see what he was eating. After swallowing, he said, "It's deer. I hunted it this morning." Her eyes narrowed. "Deer?" He nodded. "Not you, not your kind. Just an animal from the forest." She didn't move. Trust was dangerous. He sighed, then cut another piece of meat and placed it on a second plate, sliding it toward her. "You can eat, or you can starve. Your choice." She stared at it, her stomach twisting harder. The smell wrapped around her, breaking her will little by little. Her hands trembled as she reached for the plate, pulling it close. The meat was still. Warm, the edges crisp, the center soft. She lifted it to her lips, her eyes still locked on him, ready to drop it if he made any sudden move. Then she took the smallest bite. The flavor exploded on her tongue, rich, smoky, and unlike anything she had eaten before. Her body reacted before her mind could stop it, urging her to take another bite. The human noticed the change in her expression. "Better?" he asked. She didn't answer, chewing slowly, unwilling to give him the satisfaction. By the time she had taken the third bite, her guard began to lower just slightly. She kept telling herself she was only eating to survive, not because she trusted him. When she finished, he handed her a tin cup filled with steaming liquid. "Drink, it's safe." She sniffed it cautiously. The scent was earthy, strange, but not unpleasant. She took a sip, feeling warmth spread through her chest. The rain outside grew heavier, the sound filling the shelter. For the first time since she had met him, she didn't feel like running, but her mind still searched for the trap. Why would a predator share his food? Why would he risk losing his prey by giving her strength? "You still don't believe me?" he said suddenly, breaking her thoughts. She looked up, startled. "Should I?" "That depends on how much you value the truth," he said. She studied his face in the flickering firelight. It was hard to read, strong, calm, and not hiding much. Yet there was something behind his eyes she couldn't name. After a long pause, she asked, "If you do not eat me, then why did you catch me?" His gaze didn't waver. "'Cause you were running from something worse." Her pulse quickened. "Worse." He nodded toward the dark forest beyond the open doorway. "There are creatures out there that would kill you without a word. I've seen their work. I wasn't about to let them find you first." She wanted to believe him, but the stories she had been told since birth whispered otherwise. He leaned back against the wall, folding his arms. "You can keep thinking I'm the monster, or you can stay close and live through the night. Your choice." The words hung in the air. Another roll of thunder shook the shelter. She glanced toward the forest, then back at him. Her mind battled with itself, fear against hunger, trust against the strange feeling of safety. Finally, she set the empty cup down and said quietly, "I will stay. For now." A small smile touched his lips, but he didn't press her. Further, he stoked the fire, the sparks flying upward. Outside, something howled, deep, guttural, and far too close. The sound made her freeze. She looked at him, and for the first time saw no threat in his eyes, only readiness. "Stay." "Here," he said, reaching for his bow. She didn't argue. For some reason, she wanted him to come back. The howl faded into the distance, but the alien girl's heart still beat fast. The human lowered his bow, his eyes scanning the darkness one last time before closing the wooden door of the shelter. The sound of the latch falling into place echoed. In the small space, inside, the air was warm, thick with the scent of burning wood and cooked food. The flickering firelight revealed more of the room. She finally looked around. Her eyes widened. The walls were covered in objects she didn't understand, strange metal tools, coils of rope, sharp knives, and what looked like polished animal bones. Above the fireplace hung the skull of a large beast, its empty eyes staring down at her. Her body tensed. This was proof. He was a killer. She took a small step back, her heel bumping into a low wooden table. On it sat jars filled with dried plants, feathers, and small stones that shimmered in the firelight. She didn't know what any of it meant, but it felt like the inside of a hunter's den. The human noticed her staring. "You're looking at my trophies," he said. She swallowed hard. "Trophies?" No. He walked over to the wall and touched one of the mounted horns. "From animals I've hunted, food, protection, survival, nothing more." Her gaze stayed fixed on the skull above the fire. "I could hang mine there next." He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "I don't hunt people." She didn't answer, her eyes darting to the knives again. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the roof. The sound mixed with the occasional pop of burning wood. The shadows in the room seemed to move with the flames, giving the place an even more unsettling feeling. He went to a small shelf and took down a folded blanket. "You should rest. You look like you haven't slept in days." She shook her head. Sleeping here would be foolish. She closed her eyes. He could do anything. Sensing her hesitation, he placed the blanket on a bench near the fire and stepped back. "You can stay awake if you want. I'm not forcing you." He took a seat at a workbench near the other side of the room and began sharpening a knife. The sound of metal scraping against stone filled the air. Each drag of the blade made her more tense. Her eyes kept flicking between the door and the window. Outside was dark and dangerous, but in here was a predator with weapons. After a while, the human spoke without looking at her. "You're not from this forest." She hesitated, then said quietly, "No." "Where are you from?" She shook her head. "It doesn't matter. My people would never come here. They said humans live here and humans kill." I stopped sharpening and looked at her directly. And you believe everything they told you? Yes, she said firmly. He leaned back slightly, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Then why are you still here? The question hit her harder than she expected. She wanted to say it was only because of the rain or her injured ankle, but deep down, there was another reason she didn't want to face whatever was out there. Alone, still, she said nothing. He returned to his work, the rhythmic scrape of the blade strangely steadying. She found herself watching him, trying to understand. His face was calm, focused, and not the face of someone hiding an evil plan. Or maybe he was just good at hiding it. After some time, he set the knife aside and stood. I'm going to check the traps before the rain washes away the tracks. You'll be safe here, she frowned. Safe? Alone? He nodded. The door locks from the inside. No one will get in unless you let them. Before she could protest, he pulled on his coat and slung his bow over his shoulder.
Ow.
The fire, just keep it burning low. Then he was gone, the door shutting firmly behind him. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. She listened to the rain and the distant rumble of thunder. Slowly, she walked to the door and touched the latch. She could lock it. Could run. She could be free. But where would she go? She turned away, wandering around the room again. Fingers brushed over the jars of dried plants. They smelled sharp, almost medicinal. She noticed a small wooden carving on the shelf, an animal with long ears and kind eyes. It looked handmade. Her gaze moved back to the wall of trophies. This time, she noticed something strange. Among the animal skulls, there was a helmet. Not human, not from this world. It was dented, scratched, and marked with symbols she recognized from her own people's language. Her blood ran cold. She stepped closer, tracing the marks with her finger. Whoever wore this helmet had not survived her. Heart pounded again. Maybe she had been right all along. The door opened suddenly, and she jumped back. The human stepped inside, dripping wet, carrying a small animal over his shoulder. He closed the door and set the catch. Their eyes met, and she knew he could see the fear in hers. He looked at the helmet, then back at her. That was a long time ago, he said quietly. It wasn't what you think. She didn't believe him. Not yet. The storm had passed by morning. The air outside was fresh, heavy with the scent of wet earth and pine. Sunlight broke through the clouds in thin golden beams. Lighting the forest in patches, the alien girl sat on the edge of the bench near the fire, her eyes fixed on the human as he prepared to leave. He tied his bowstring, checked his arrows, and slung a small leather pack over his shoulder. Every movement was quiet and controlled, as if he had done this hundreds of times before. Stay inside, he told her. It's safer here. Eyes narrowed. Safer for you so I can't see what you do out there. He paused at the door, turning to face her. You think I'm hiding something? I know you are, she said firmly. He studied her for a long moment before shaking his head. Fine, follow me if you can keep up. The challenge in his tone made her rise immediately. Her ankle still hurt, but the thought of finding proof was stronger than the pain. She grabbed the doorframe for balance as she stepped outside. Forest was alive again after the rain. Water dripped from the leaves, birds called to each other, and the ground was soft underfoot. She followed him down a narrow path, her eyes scanning for signs of danger or signs of his cruelty. They moved in silence for some time. The human's steps were steady and light despite the bow on his back. He moved like a predator, but not one that wasted energy. Finally, he slowed and raised his hand, signaling her to stop. She crouched behind a fallen log, peering over to see what had caught his attention. Ahead, in a small clearing, a large animal grazed, taller than both of them, with thick fur and curved horns. Its hide rippled as it moved, unaware of the danger nearby. The human knelt, drawing an arrow from his quiver. He didn't rush, breathed slowly, eyes locked on the target. She watched him, expecting him to shoot immediately, but he didn't. Instead, he waited, studying the animal's movements. When the beast lowered its head to drink from a puddle, he finally drew the bow and released the arrow. The sound was soft, but the shot was powerful. The arrow struck deep, and the animal staggered before collapsing to the ground. The girl's breath caught. She had seen hunts before, messy, desperate, but this was something else. Quick, clean, almost respectful. He walked to the animal and knelt beside it, placing a hand on its side until it stopped moving. Then he pulled the arrow free and wiped it on the grass. She stepped out from behind the log, her voice sharp. "You could do that to me, just as easily." He glanced up at her. "I could, but I don't." "Why?" she demanded. He stood, adjusting the bow on his back. "Because I don't hunt people. I hunt to eat. I hunt to keep the dangerous ones from killing others." She frowned. "Dangerous ones?" He pointed toward a line of claw marks on a nearby tree, deep and fresh. "There are predators in these woods that don't care what you are, human. Alien doesn't matter. They kill everything." Her gaze followed the marks, and a chill moved through her. They were far larger than any claw she had seen before. He began working on the animal, cutting the meat cleanly and quickly. She watched in silence, trying to make sense of his words. Finally, she spoke again. "If you protect, then why catch me in a trap?" He didn't look up from his work. "Because you were running blind. Something was chasing you that night. I saw the tracks." Her mind flashed back to that moment in the dark forest, the heavy footsteps, the feeling of being hunted. She had assumed it was him. What was it? She asked quietly. He tied the meat into his pack before answering. "A varsk. Ah! Big, fast, with teeth that can crush bone. If I hadn't caught you first, it would have." She wanted to argue, but the certainty in his voice made it hard. They started back toward the shelter, the weight of his pack slowing him only slightly. The path was quieter now, the sounds of the forest returning to normal. As they walked, she asked, "Why risk yourself?" "I'm nothing to you." He glanced at her, a flicker of something passing in his eyes. "Because I was nothing to someone once, and they still saved me." She didn't reply. His words settled in her chest like a stone she couldn't move. When they reached the cabin, he hung the meat near the fire to dry. She sat near the doorway, still unsure what to believe. His skills, his patience, his strange kindness, none of it matched the monster her people had described. But the helmet on his wall still haunted her. If he truly only hunted animals, why did he have a trophy from her kind? That question stayed with her as she watched him work, the truth still hidden somewhere between his words and his silence. The day passed slowly in the forest. The human spent hours preparing the meat from the morning's hunt, hanging strips above the fire to dry. The alien girl stayed near the doorway, her eyes moving from the woods outside to the helmet on his wall. No matter how much she tried to focus on other things, the questions kept turning in her head. Late in the afternoon, the wind began to change. It blew colder, carrying with it a deep, strange smell, sharp, musky, and heavy in the air. The human noticed it instantly. He straightened, his eyes narrowing toward the tree line. "Get inside," he said. Her body tensed. "What is it?" He reached for his bow, his voice low and quick. Her pulse quickened at the word. She remembered the claw marks he had shown her earlier, how deep they had been. She stepped back into the cabin, her gaze fixed on the shadows between the trees. The forest grew quiet, too quiet. Even the birds stopped calling. The human moved. To the doorway, arrow already notched. His body was still, but his eyes scanned every movement, every twitch of a branch. Then she heard a low, rumbling growl from somewhere in the dark. It made her skin prickle. The growl came again, closer now. Branches shifted, and then it stepped into view. The creature was massive, taller than any animal she had seen here. Its body was covered in thick, dark fur, its head broad, with a short muzzle full of teeth. The claws on its front paws dug deep into the earth as it moved, slow and deliberate. Its eyes glowed faintly in the fading light. The human's voice was calm, but firm. "Stay back." She gripped the edge of the table, her eyes locked on the beast. It looked from the human to her, as if deciding who to attack first. With a sudden snarl, it lunged forward. The human's arrow flew, striking deep into its shoulder. The Varsk roared, the sound echoing through the forest, and charged faster. Inside, he barked, stepping forward to meet it. But she didn't move. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the fight. The human sidestepped the first strike. Drawing another arrow and shooting into its chest, the Varsk barely slowed. It swung a massive paw at him, claws ripping through his coat. He stumbled back, blood showing at his side, but his stance stayed firm. The alien girl's breath came fast. This was not the fight of a hunter against prey. This was a battle to survive. The Varsk lunged again, jaws snapping. The human dropped his bow and pulled. A long hunting knife from his belt, slashing across its face. The beast howled, rearing up to strike again. She saw the danger before he did. The Varsk's claws aimed straight for his chest. Without thinking, she grabbed the heavy iron pot from the fire and ran forward. The heat burned her hands, but she swung it hard against the side of the creature's head. The Varsk staggered, just enough for the human to drive his knife deep into its neck. The roar that followed was deafening. The creature thrashed, knocking them both back, but the wound was too deep. It collapsed onto the ground, its breathing ragged, till it finally went still. The forest fell silent again. The human pulled the knife free, its chest rising and falling quickly. Blood stained his side, the cut deep but not fatal. She stood. A few steps away, her hands shaking, the pot still in her grip. Her mind spun. She had just fought alongside him. He looked at her, a faint smile in his tired eyes. "You didn't stay inside?" She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she set the pot down and moved closer, seeing the blood on his shirt. "You're hurt," she said. He shrugged. "Better me than you." Her heart twisted at the words. For days she had believed he was only waiting to harm her. Now he had bled to protect her. Without thinking, she tore a strip from the hem of her clothing and pressed it to his wound. He winced, but didn't pull away. They stayed like that for a moment, the fire crackling behind them, the massive dead predator lying in the grass, the cold wind carrying away the scent of blood. Finally, she asked why. He met her gaze. Because no one should be left to face something like that alone. Her fingers paused in their work. She felt something shift inside her, something she didn't want to name yet. The human glanced at the Varsk's body. "Well, need to move it before others come?" She nodded slowly, but her eyes stayed on him. The truth she had been running from was becoming harder to deny this man. This human was not the monster she had been told to fear. The forest was quiet again, but the alien girl could still hear the echo of the Varsk's roar in her mind. The human stood over the body of the beast, his breath heavy, his side bleeding through the cloth she had tied around him. They worked together to drag the carcass away from the cabin, far enough so its scent would not draw other predators during the night. The weight was crushing, and the wet ground made every step harder. But neither of them complained. When they finally returned to the shelter, the fire's warmth was a welcome relief. He sank into the chair by the hearth, leaning back with a tired sigh. She stood near the doorway, unsure of what to say. Her eyes drifted to the helmet on the wall again. It had been the shadow over every moment she had spent here, a reminder of why she should never trust him. Now, after what he had done for her, it looked different. She walked to it slowly. Her fingers brushed the worn surface, feeling the dents and scratches. "This belonged to one of my people," she said softly. He nodded. "Yes. Did you?" She stopped, the rest of the question hanging between them. He shook his head. "No. I found it years ago. The one who wore it died in these woods. I tried to help, but I was too late." She turned to face him, searching his expression for any sign of a lie. His eyes held no gloating, no pride, only a quiet weight that felt real. "Why keep it?" she asked. "To remember," he said simply. "Every time I look at it, I think about what I could have done better. It reminds me not to fail the next one." Her chest tightened. For days, she had clung to the belief that he was a danger, that his kindness was a trap. But now, everything she thought she knew was breaking apart. He noticed her silence and pushed himself to his feet despite the pain in his side. "You should get some rest," he said. She shook her head. You need rest more than I do. Smiled faintly. I've had worse. She stepped closer, her voice firm. You bled for me. Let me help you. Before he could argue, she guided him back to the chair and took a clean cloth from his supplies. She pressed it gently to his wound, changing the bandage with careful hands. The closeness was strange, his warmth, his steady breathing. The way he didn't flinch away from her touch. When she finished, he met her gaze. You don't have to stay if you want to leave tomorrow. I won't stop you. Her lips parted, but no words came. Leaving had been her goal from the moment he caught her. Now the idea of walking away felt heavier than staying. The fire crackled between them, the only sound in the room. Finally she spoke. If I go, something else will come for me. And you won't be there. He tilted his head.
Oh.
And if you stay. She took a slow breath. Then I'm safe. His expression softened. Safe is rare in these woods. She nodded, her voice quieter now. Safe is rare everywhere. The rain had stopped outside, leaving the night clear. Through the window, the stars shone bright, scattering their light across the dark forest. She walked to the door and opened it, letting the cool air wash over her. He joined her, standing at her side. For a long moment, they simply looked out, at the trees, neither speaking. She turned her head toward him. I thought you were going to eat me. His mouth curved into a small, amused smile. That was never my plan. I know, she said. Now, they stood there until the chill made her shiver. He stepped back inside first, holding the door open for her. When she passed him, she realized her fear of turning her back to him was gone. Inside, the firelight made the cabin feel warmer, smaller, almost like a place she belonged. She sat on the bench, and he returned to his chair. Leaning back with a tired sigh, silence settled again, but this time it wasn't heavy. Finally, she said, You could have left me in that trap. You could have walked away. I could have. He agreed, but I didn't. Her gaze stayed on him, steady now. Then let me stay here. Let me help. It's not just for tonight, for as long as you'll have me. His brows lifted slightly, as if he hadn't expected those words. You're. Sure, she nodded. You saved me. That makes you mine as much as I am yours. The fire popped, sending a small shower of sparks upward. He didn't speak right away, just studied her face in the light. Finally, he said, Then stay. Relief moved through her like warmth from the fire. She leaned back against the wall, letting the quiet of the cabin wrap around her. For the first time since she had stepped into this forest, she didn't feel like prey. She didn't feel hunted. She felt home,